will be the host of the panel discussion on, and the topic of it is unsatisfactory participation of Polish researcher in long-term fellowships. And I would like to ask Katarzyna Ziętara-Ritter to take her seat. Also Jan Stanek, Tomek Włodarski, and Lidia Brubel.
Thank you very much. Welcome to the panel. I was just saying that if technology doesn't work, humans have to take over. So maybe it's not so bad, the future for us, with all this artificial intelligence that is supposed to take over. But maybe in this context would be nice, so idea is that we'll discuss the major issue here, which we have confront. We have to confront us with. It means, you've heard, we pay to the EMBO, EMBC budget, €500,000. Roughly 2/3 go to for the long-term fellowships. So we are saying that we pay for this long-term fellowship over €300,000 a year, which means roughly outgoing, incoming 10 fellowships, yes, more or less. And we do not have 10 fellowships, okay? It happens that we have people who go for long-term fellowships, not too many. We do not have people coming for the long-term fellowships in Poland in general. In numbers, it looks better because there are Polish nationals who benefit from the fellowships, but most of them move between different other countries, within Europe, from Europe to US or whatever. So one of the main reasons behind this, our meeting today, is to think why does it happen and what we can do to improve the situation. My experience with long-term fellowship is following. I've been for 4 years on this committee that awards long-term fellowship committee. That's actually a major work. I had to review thousands of grant applications, really thousands, 3,000, 4,000, something like this, over 4 years. And then being a member, I'm sometimes asked to interview the candidates. So let's review the procedure, because this would have heard from David, which did not happen. So you apply online to EMBO. This application is, I know, 30 pages or something, more or less, I guess. So it includes your brief research proposal that's been agreed upon with the host laboratory. You discuss your achievement from your previous period, like PhD or the first postdoc. It may happen that after the first postdoc you do. You present your CV, and also you present the credential of the host lab, more or less. This is what is there. This is initially reviewed kind of internally, and about half, I guess, at least it was like that done, half of those applications move to the next step. And the next step is the interview. So the EMBO office writes the EMBO members, or IP, the Young Investigator Program awardees, whether they would be willing to interview the candidate. And then it is arranged between this interviewer and the person who is interviewed. The person usually comes, sometimes on Skype, it's already like in the US, it happens. But usually comes to the lab. Everything is taken care by EMBO. You have no administration involved and so on. They pay the trip, they pay the hotel. In my case, they come to the lab meeting. They give the presentation. We discuss. If there are people not exactly in my field, but there are other people in the institute, I invite them also to take part in this meeting, listening. And then after this discussion, the person who does interview has to write a report. A report goes to back to EMBO. And then the long-term fellowship committee evaluates this. really seriously. And now I understand it's split, I guess. Previously was that there were like dozens of us, and we had to review all of the applications. Each of us, all of the applications. This is why it was hundreds every time. And that's very important information for you, because I'm a neuroscientist. I had to review and score the application in plant molecular biology, microbiology, crystallography, which I know very little about. Yes? So this is, so your application has to be really persuasive. Then we do the scoring at home, come to Heidelberg the evening before, go for a nice dinner, next morning to EMBO headquarters at Boxberg, and we have like half a day to make the ranking. But we start with all these scores on the table, so we know how everyone scored everyone. Yes? This is absolutely amazing, actually, that there is very good agreement, even if the people are coming from different fields. So agreement is very good. Usually when there's a new member of the committee, it needs some time to adjust. And usually there are people who uniformly score lower or uniformly score higher. But it's very easy to appreciate this very moment. So discussion is, so we know what is the number of fellowships that can be really awarded. So there is not much time spent on those that are well below this number. There is not much discussion about the top candidates, would be a waste of time. And we just discuss the gray zone and discuss when there is a really marked discrepancy among the scoring members. Okay? I think it's a very fair procedure and it's very efficient. And then there's a question, okay, where's the problem and when is the problem with our Polish applicants? And I will take up front my opinion, and then we can discuss this more. First, during the application, you have to realize that the first especially scoring is not done by specialists. At a certain moment, the interviewers are the only specialists, unless there is someone in the fellowship committee that understands the stuff they do. But recently I was interviewing someone who was doing single unit recording in the rat hippocampus, going to Jury Buzaki lab in New York. I'm sure there is no one in the committee that knows electrophysiology. So the point is that, so the first decision, really, I believe is made to great extent on the publication record. And I think the first problem is that in our research community, especially among young people, we do not really understand what is the good publication record at this stage of career, finishing PhD. Okay? So the good, great, excellent, outstanding, whatever publication record is 2 papers. First author, 2 papers in decent journals. But you know, like JBC, Journal of Biochemistry, is a respected journal in our community, so the impact factor doesn't count. JBC is like 4 something. This will be a good paper. Okay? It doesn't need to be a Nature paper. There are not too many people like this, sure. I remember once I defended a Czech lady on the fellowship committee. She had 2 papers in neurochemistry, which is a specialized in the field. I know impact factor now 3 or something. Yeah? And she got the grant. So 2 papers, and she advanced to the second round. See? So there are something like 2 papers, decent journal, first author. Something which for me was actually surprising when I started to work there, coming from the Polish research and evaluation culture. Generally, most of the people, if they see more than those 2 papers, they don't like it, especially if they are not the first author. They usually say, okay, because what is this fellowship system all about? Is to select future leaders of molecular biology. One of the questions we answer is, can this person stand a chance to run their own laboratory in 5 years? Okay? So people say, okay, 2 very good papers first author. Then 8 not first author or mediocre papers. Okay. Is a leader who cannot focus, someone who cannot really decide what is the most important in the career, is not a leadership quality. Okay? So this is something which I think is not understood at all. And obviously, our system of financing research in Poland, all this parametric evaluation and this horror coming called slots, the system does not promote a few very good papers. You are forced, okay? We are all forced, actually. We are all forced that we have to publish more because this is the evaluation and nobody wants to be called by, someone by the dean, rector, or director saying, oh, young doctor, 2 papers, 4 years? I don't know. Not good, okay? So this is the first problem which I would identify, that we don't really understand what is the culture of the good research. Good research is about making discoveries and reporting them in papers, okay? Research is not about publishing. That's very important. Publishing is a secondary, okay? Obviously, we have to publish those discoveries because otherwise nobody would know that the discoveries exist. Nobody is lucky as Mendel, who waited as his stuff was rediscovered years later, okay? So that's obvious, publishing. And the quality of a journal is a proxy of the quality of the discovery and so on. But these are secondary. The most important is discovery. So this is the first thing. The second thing on the second stage, what I also see from the perspective of being 5 years, 5 times in the ERC, and chairing ERC panel, and now advising people who apply for ERC. We do not have this culture for being prepared for the interview. Somehow people are withdrawn, okay, got invited for interview, goes for interview. You have to practice, you have to train, what would you say, how you can answer the questions, and so on. This is another issue that we are not very well prepared. We don't have this in our research culture. I remember talking with Sebastian Glad. I don't know if you know him. He's in Małopolskie Centrum Biotechnology in Kraków, the Biotechnology Center. And he said that when he was coming to Poland, he got installation grant and so on. The one thing he was sort of afraid that since he was coming from EMBL culture, from abroad, speaking good English and accomplished researcher, published well, that so much time he would spend in reading the other drafts of publications or drafts of grant proposals. And he says, nobody ever asked me. And this is the main job at my position, yes? That people ask me to advise. So don't be scared, don't be afraid, because it is for your benefit, really. I think those are probably the major factors that contribute to the lower success level. Okay, and now I will ask, just in order, our colleagues to say their experience and also then their opinion.
Thank you. When I heard what you say, I also very quickly evaluate in my mind my application process and what exactly I had in my CV. I was completely not, I didn't know about what really is for you, the good publication. I thought that one honestly is enough. In a really good journal, I didn't know this two.
Paper, yes.
No. I had at least 2, so now I know I got a fellowship. So in my case, I applied for the EMBO long-term fellowship at the last year of my PhD study. I applied from Poland, from Institute of Biochemistry and Biophysics, Polyacademy of Sciences in Warsaw. So it is possible to do a good job in Poland and be scientists who can compete with other scientists from Europe. So in my case, after the PhD, I was very close to ending. I didn't have yet diploma, but the publications were done. I had 3 publications as a first author. 2 you could qualify as a good ones. I had another one from master. Then I had several as one of other co-authors. And generally, in total, was around 15 of them. But to the field, there was this 3 the most important and several as maybe review articles. So I think I was okay with this step. About writing grant proposal, so the first step. In my case, I exactly knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a scientist. I knew exactly in which field. So the first answer is, the first thing what you need to ask yourself is in which field of science you would like to excel yourself and in which field you want to be an expert. I wanted to continue what I was doing during my PhD. However, I wanted to switch model organisms. I was doing autophagy in plants, and I wanted to go to yeast and to mammals. So I didn't want to apply for any fellowship, apply to any lab. I wanted to go to a particular lab that is in the forefront of autophagy discovery. And I applied to a laboratory that is in the United States. Because I was changing the model organism, I was afraid that this is a little risky for my future PI, so that's the moment when I thought that applying for the fellowship and coming with the money will be quite convincing to give me a chance and just give me a spot and access to the research, to the facility and to reagents, because generally I wouldn't cost too much. And it was quite convincing, so my current mentor said that he is very willing to help me get a fellowship. The question was for which exactly fellowship I'm going to apply. There were several that I could choose to go to US, and except Prestige, all of them are quite famous. I look into things like which fellowship is well known, which fellowship can support me as a woman in science. So I was looking for a fellowship that is family-oriented. For me to go for the postdoc training, it was asking my family to go with me and to just keep proving what they were doing in Poland and just move somewhere else and start our life from the beginning. So I was looking for something that put me in the very privileged position where I can support my family to the level in which we don't need to worry about our life expenses. And my husband will have enough time to look for his dream job. And that's why we decided to go and try myself in EMBO. Writing the grant proposal, this is a little tricky. This is usually the first moment when you really try to write your own grant proposal. At some point of the career, you should try to do that, and this is great if you had experience before. If not, I think you really should work very close with your future PI. This is the person who also will benefit from having you in the lab and getting this fellowship. So I ask for current grants to know more or less what's going on in the lab. I ask for the previous grants for successful and unsuccessful to learn from their mistakes. I had idea what I wanted to do. It was not exactly related to main research that they were doing, so it was very close, but I want something little different. So I wanted to know if that's okay, if we have a facility for that, to this type of experiments. And I was trying to put my research in such a way that it will, of course, will benefit my PI as well. So he helped me a lot. He checked my first draft. He gave me a lot of important tips and suggestions. I think that benefit my application a lot. So writing the research strategy, I think you might think that this is the most difficult part. With help of your PI, it might be the easiest part. Of course, you need to, at the beginning, know what you want to do. So my suggestion, don't try to do what I did and apply for the fellowship just like 1.5 months before the deadline, but spend a couple months to just find a really good hypothesis and idea how to test them. You want to have nice novelty in your strategy, and also think about pitfalls or alternative strategies will just prove that you are mature enough to not only have hypotheses and know how to do that, but also answer what to do if something will go wrong. For me, the most challenging was to put everything in just these couple pages. It's not enough because you want to first show that you are really very close to understand almost everything in the field, and then you need to shrink it to the minimum, and still you don't want to lose the clarity. I was expecting that it will be evaluated by someone who may not be an expert, and still I wanted to show that that I know what I'm saying, and I wanted to show the novelty, but I don't really know who will be reading that. So this is I think, quite challenging. After that, the second part of the selection process, which is the interview, this for me was the most difficult because of fear to go and meet in person another scientist who's now, I'm sure, that is an expert in the field. I went to London. I was hoping for the Skype interview, which probably will be much, much easier from the emotional point of view. But honestly, I'm now really happy that it was in person. It was so natural, so nice. During the whole process, it was more than 1 hour, I never felt that I'm on the interview. I thought that I have just really nice conversation with another experienced scientist. It was like conversation between two scientists. One is the major, one is just young. A lot of good advice, a lot of talk we spent about what I think about my career, how I want to continue, why I like this topic, what is so interesting in it. I never thought that I'm examined or interrogated to check if I really know what I want to do and why. So I left the interview with the feeling that I really want to be a scientist because the science is cool and the people who are doing that, they are so nice and so helpful. I want to tell you that the professor who interviewed me, we are still in a good contact. I applied in 2014, so it's almost 5 years. And she became my mentor.
Hello?
It was not, I mean, I never thought about that. I thought that the only mentor will be my supervisor. But she became my second mentor because we had such a nice conversation, and I really benefit to have right now 2 mentors and learn from both of them. So my experience is fantastic. I was afraid to apply for the fellowship. I thought that it's so prestige that I was overwhelmed by the prestige of the fellowship. But I remember what my husband told me, that it's better to try and fail than fail to try. I keep that in mind, and so far it's working pretty well for me. I benefit from EMBO for 2 years, and it's amazing how good this fellowship is. And the process is not so bad. For sure, you will do great. Just take a chance.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, organizers, for inviting me here and giving opportunity to share my experience with EMBO. So my name is Lydia, and I'm doing my research now at Cambridge University. And I did my PhD in Warsaw at the International Institute for Molecular and Cell Biology with Agnieszka Hacińska, Professor Agnieszka Hacińska. And I applied at the last stage of my PhD. And maybe I thought I would share what's my back thinking, what's important in order to be a successful applicant. So I think it's important to start to plan ahead, sort of during your PhD time, think where you want to aim and choose first like a really good lab. I think it's important that that research in this lab are to the high standard and the publications are high quality, and the research is obviously interesting for you and allows you to dedicate yourself more than 8 hours a day. Yeah, and I think work hard, and that's important part in the PhD. I also think it's important to take part in the programs while you're doing PhD. So, for example, try to apply for this short-term fellowships by EMBO or by Polish grant institutes in order to go abroad for a few months to see how research is done there. It's good for your experience. It's good for your CV, and then you have also the person that can give you references, which is also important. What else? What's also important? I think it's also important to choose the future host lab for your EMBO fellowship that also research done in this lab is to the high quality, and the place where you want to go, for example, the university or the institute, is also recognizable internationally, because I think what EMBO values is also to aim high, so that we go to the best places that we can learn from the best people, from the best environment. And I also think it's important to actually switch your field or try to do something more challenging. So I think it's not good to sort of continue your research the way you did on your PhD, the same subject, the same topic, but challenge yourself a bit and change like the system, the subject, and I think it's valued during your application. Yeah, I think that's all for now.
Oh, I can use this one.
Okay.
Okay, hello. My name is Tomek Włodarski, and first of all, I would like to thank the organizers for bringing me here. And I will try to also share my experience about my EMBO adventure. So I did my PhD in Warsaw, University of Warsaw. It was bioinformatics, structural bioinformatics. And then during my last year, I decided to apply for EMBO long-term fellowship. But like Lydia said, it's quite important to plan ahead. So I actually started to think about it at, I don't know, end of the second or beginning of the third year, what I would like to do after my PhD. So at the middle of the third year, I believe I got short-term fellowship to visit Cambridge University for 3 months. And then I kind of established quite a good connection with one of the PIs there. And actually then with his help, I got contact with another PI at London, because now I am at UCL, University College London. And actually he became my supervisor of the EMBO long-term fellowship. So I think it's quite important to go even for a very short summer project somewhere else, just to see how research is done in another country, another lab. And also with that you can get amazing network experience and meet people who then can help you in the process of applying for the EMBO fellowship, for example. So like I said, I applied at the end of my PhD. I think I was after just submitting my thesis. I started writing and talking with my future supervisor. My application experience was slightly unusual because initially I was very happy because my reviewer was supposed to be from Switzerland, from Zurich. So I was very happy because I thought I will go there for a week and I will go for a hike. But later on I learned that unfortunately he is super busy and he travels a lot. So we had not even Skype, we had over the phone, 1 hour phone call. It was super stressful because I never in my life had to talk about my research over the phone. And the conversation was something like that. Now on the third slide, you see this, and on this graph, this graph means that. So it was really, really stressful. I remember I was wreck after this, but luckily, I mean, the guy was very, very helpful, and he was also top of the field. So he was he was the first author of the paper who gave his boss Nobel Prize. So he was really top of the scientist, and I was talking with him over the phone, trying to explain my research. It was tough. But apart from that, that was a really cool experience, and I think I learned a lot. In terms of the EMBO, I think that it comes with a prestige of this EMBO fellow and all the networking, which was mentioned before. And also the EMBO meeting was a lot of fun. You can meet, as it was said, you can meet amazing young scientists at different level, because some of them are just started, I think, as a lot of them are already finishing or already have positions somewhere, so you can learn from them how they manage to secure positions somewhere else. And also this leadership course, where you can learn about not only how to set up your future group, if you think about that, but also how to manage your own research, how to manage your own time. So it's really quite interesting experience and highly recommend. But I would like to stress this again. Really try to spend some time during your PhD, try to visit some other groups in Poland, outside of Poland, to see what's there. And I also, like Lydia said, I also recommend to not to do the same research as you did during your PhDs. I also shifted from bioinformatics to what is now called integrative structural biology. So I also highly recommend to shift to another field, because it's kind of opens your possibilities for the future. Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
And now I would like to ask the technician to try to switch to slides. I prepared a couple, just to please your eyes and maybe attract a bit of your attention. So we'll see how it works. I will look for a point to switch. Yeah, if something could go wrong, it will surely do. Yeah, so my name is Jan Stanek, and this will be the study case of how to get the fellowship. Yeah, so I would like to show you what kind of profile I had at the time I applied. So I graduated from the University of Warsaw, similarly to Włodek, and at the time I applied was 2014. I was, of course, at the end of my PhD. It was already the 5th year, and where I applied to a Highfield Center. Whoops, can you restart it, possibly? I'm afraid I pushed the wrong button. I hit the wrong button. Thank you. So about the publications. Professor Kaczmarek told us that 2 is fine. At the time, of course, you need to take into account that it was the 5th year. I had 6 first authorship papers, and plus some 3 review papers. I don't think it's obligatory to have as many. Probably 2 good ones is enough. Maybe one of the distinctive facts is that maybe you should have one of the general audience journal, like General Chemistry or General Biology. And why I did apply. So what is maybe strange in my case, that I am not from the core biology. So I chose my next lab. So I met this magician Guido Pintocuda, an Italian very dynamic researcher. So I think the choice of the lab you want to apply is absolutely crucial. If you choose a leader, preferably at the earlier stage of career, and that has already established a group, is absolutely crucial. So please choose smartly, and then make sure that you will get enough support from your host, potential host, to prepare the application. And this host is running a large-scale facility for NMR. So it is not core biology, but it is one of the mainstream structural biology methods for structural characterization of molecules. And so I was skeptic to apply, honestly. He told me that, okay, Jan, maybe I have funding for your position, but it's better for you to get your independent funding. It's better for your CV. So far you have good papers, so you should really try. I will help you. So he was like pushing me to apply for EMBO, despite the fact it was not strictly my field or area. And how did he plan it? So we sit together and we identify. So first was to identify a good biological object. He had a very interesting collaboration with a top expert in bacterial replication, Professor Dixon from Australia. So this was the excellence and importance of the project. And also there was this factor that you bridge structural methods SANS, SACS, NMR, and also modeling. So there were these crucial components. So not only excellence, not only bridging different fields, but you need also a novelty. So what was novelty in that is that we wanted to use cutting-edge new technologies that were not used before. And what Lydia and Tomek also said, that you need to switch at least a bit your field. You should not continue what you have done before, because then you don't develop. And I am from solution NMR. This was completely new for me also, was a new emerging technique, which is called NMR in the solid state. So you need to invent some key factors. So the system is important in the context of drug discovery, so drug resistance is a raising problem. So you need to identify key components that would highlight your application. And we were also asked in this panel to mention maybe some not only benefits but potential issues and troubles. So you need to plan smartly your project. And then I would like to mention that there were few particular things about my project. Unlike all participants here, I went to France. So group was, of course, English speaking, naturally, but the environment was not really adapted to host a non-French speaking person. So without a good support, it would be extremely hard to survive. So I'm very grateful that they supported me with everyday situations, but you need to take it to account. All other people went to English-speaking countries, but if you want to go somewhere else, please make sure that you will get enough institutional support in your everyday life. There was, of course, support of EMBO that I also appreciated that helped me to solve social security things. The transition that Bettina mentioned today is important. I think I had exactly this case in France, that the EMBO scheme was not exactly compatible to the procedures that they had, and they were not familiar with EMBO fellowships. They didn't know how to solve such issues, how to ensure me with social security, health insurance. I had to solve it with my PI. It was a bit, I think it was a bit of waste of time at that point. I would also like to mention that it's good to have international collaboration in your grant, because then you extend your scientific network. And just not to go too long, there was also a question how this experience helped me to develop my career. So after a couple of years, so first the year after I stopped my EMBO fellowship because I prepared a successful application for Marie Curie International Fellowship, incoming fellowship. And then I was lucky enough to come back to Poland. So also, unlike other participants of this panel, I decided to come back, and the Ministry of Science has launched a new program called Polish Return, which I think is a very good idea. So I really appreciate that as a kick-off for your new group. So please also think like on the long term. If you go abroad for a postdoc, you should also have an idea whether you are going to stay or you want, what to do after, right? So if we want the fellows also to come back to Poland to bring their knowledge and competences, it's very good to also be aware of such programs. So that would be all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Actually, let me stress this again, that because this was mentioned, and I should also stress that changing the fields is advantageous. In EMBO community, we believe that it's very important not to stay in the same. So, and those changes could be quite dramatic. I know changes that someone from plant biology was moving to molecular neuroscience. And this has always been appreciated by the fellowship committee. This was always advantageous. Your previous experience is not necessarily you have to stay. Some people believe, oh yeah, I continue because I have credentials. No, be open-minded. I'm saying EMBO looks for the future leaders of the field. And the future leaders, the leaders should be open-minded, yes? Okay. Would we have any comment from the Council of Young Researchers? Now we may address, we know the situation, some general things. So one of the issues is to address what can we do to make it better.
Thank you. Yeah, so as a member of Young Researcher Council, I was really appreciating your speeches, and I think it's great that you managed to get the fellowships to move forward in your careers, but we also have to think why there's only so few of you getting this application. When you look at the number of applications from Poland, in the last 4 years, only 72 people applied for the long-term fellowships, which is less than Polish people situated outside of Poland. There's almost 3 times more people outside of Poland who apply for long-term fellowships, Polish people, than people who are located in Poland applying. And also the success rate is much lower, so only 5% of the applications actually are awarded long-term fellowships, which in comparison to the EMBO average is 15%, so it's 3 times lower. And I think it's important to diagnose what are the reasons why the applications are not successful and why so few researchers actually apply. And I also had a look at some reports that analyze possible problems of lack of this mobility of Polish researchers. And there are 2 groups of barriers. First, you can see that the family-related issues. So people are afraid to apply, to go abroad, because they have husbands, wives, children who have to be supported as well. And they are afraid to go for long-term fellowships because they think they might not find job for their spouses, their partners. They cannot find place in the kindergarten for their children. So they are simply not applying because of these reasons. Additional factor was maybe not related to family issues. It's just people don't want to leave Poland because they are afraid that they will lose contact with their home institution. They will be not able to come back to find a connection with their universities, and this was also a big problem for them. So I would appreciate also comments from your side. What do you think? Why people are not applying? What, in your opinion, are the barriers, the biggest problems?
So actually we have 2 issues here. One is the issue, yes, we notice that the mobility of researcher in Poland is on decline. This is what you are referring to. That's in general, the mobility is on decline, and you identify some of those problems. The other issue, what about the EMBO application? With EMBO, I'm working in a big institute. We have 200 PhD students. So there's plenty of people who could apply. I would find the major motivation why they don't apply, because they fear that they don't stand a chance, that they don't have sufficient quality of CV, publication record, and so on, specifically for EMBO, because it's so prestigious, I guess. What do you think?
I agree. I think that the people who already have high mobility, they already went for the PhD study. So of course for them, going to another place probably is easier than for the people who are in Poland and do the PhD here. So we are around our mid-20s and 30s. Most of us already might have a family. I had family at that moment, so making the decision to go abroad, honestly, for a really long time, it's not just a couple of months, that was a decision that I had to do with my husband. And I had to think about my kid as well, so it's difficult. I knew scientists who are really good, and they have incredible purpose, but they decide not to go because of the family. So for sure, this is the reason why people may not apply for the EMBO or for another fellowship. I think that also we have the problem with self-confidence. I thought that I'm not good enough. It seems I am. we didn't know. I mean, when I applied in 2014, we didn't have this type of the meetings, and you are really in a good position when you can hear not only what our side, but also, which I think is super important, how it is from the reviewer sides. I didn't know how many publications I should have. It was very difficult for me to think if I'm qualified or not. I just take a chance. So the transparency of the process and understand what you mean by the good publications, and it's really important. It might help people to justify if they should start or not the process of applying for the EMBO. Still, I think that we are a little lazy. And if we can get postdoc position somewhere where the lab can support us already, then why should I apply for the fellowship and write something, then I need to write some report at the end, I taking responsibility for my research. That could be quite also challenging if you really want to do that. I think we should. This is the process of learning for us. So if you are sure that you want to be a scientist and you want to be group leader or some position, you need to start taking responsibility for your research, and there's no better chance at the fellowships. But this is also things that people don't do. So I think we should apply, even if we maybe think that we are not good enough. Let's judge them if we are or we are not, because even if we fail, we just learn. It's experience. It's process of learning. If you do your first grant proposal that maybe is not great, next time you do that better. And I never had a chance to do the interview. That was my first interview. Great experience as well.
Okay, thank you. You can take the other mic. So try to identify the problems from your colleagues, peers of your generation. You are successful, okay, but why the other did not make it?
Tough question. But I think it's a bit of lack. I think it's a bit of lack of information and like being aware that you actually can get it and how to get it. Like sometimes lack of support from like a person, maybe like your supervisor or your colleagues, just saying, just try, just go ahead, just think about the fusion. Sometimes people I know, I talk sometimes with colleagues before on my PhD, and they were like, no, I'm not having like enough good publications. No, I think I will not try. And I'm like, why? You should just, or maybe you work a bit harder and then think about that before, but give yourself a chance. And actually, I think also it's a bit like lack of information, because like in my time was like this, that I knew about EMBO and other fellowships from like web page or colleagues or going on a conference, and somebody said to me like, oh, you should apply for this grant. And I was like, okay, I will check that on the web page. And then because there was not such meetings like this that awares you that what are the rules and what you have to think ahead about. Like you think not 1 month ahead of applying of the deadline, but you think 1 or 2 years ahead. So I think that's something maybe lacking in the thinking. Maybe, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I think there are, again, it's mobility and self-confidence. I think they're connected. So I think if you are more mobile, you also gain a lot of self-confidence. And I really, like I said before, I really encourage you. And it's not necessarily has to be like going for 1 year. It can be even for 1 month, and over the summer. And I remember, because I had initially this barrier that when I was doing my undergrads, that was in Krakow, that it was very difficult for me to think that I can apply for, I don't know, Cambridge and just got there for 1 month. But I took a risk, and I wrote 100 emails probably to every possible university in the world. Probably some of them actually blocked my email at some point. And I was super amazed by the fact that I was at that time I was at the end of my 4th year of undergrad, so I had no record of publication. I have no record of anything. Of course, many people had never replied to me, But surprisingly, I got two emails back with who accepted me for a whole summer. One of them was from Cambridge University, so top of the top. And the second one was from US, the best institute for my field, which was back then simulations. I choose US because they also give me some small amount of money so I could survive. So I was really amazed, and actually in the emails, for example, email from Cambridge I got was something like, we usually don't take summer students, but because we have such a great track record with Polish students, we do exception. So basically, they wanted to take me, and even the guy was trying to convince me when I decided to go to US for summer. He was writing me email trying to convince me to visit his lab at the end. So I had to, at my 4th year of university, I had to reject Cambridge University. So that was a very bizarre thing. The last thing I want to mention is university in Poland. That I have a feeling that universities in Poland don't take advantages of the number of Polish scientists abroad. There are like plenty of us there, and all of us, most of us, are very open to help, to come, to talk like we are doing today. But frankly, neither Jagiellonian University nor University of Warsaw never emailed me asking where I am, what I am doing after graduating. I never got email like, oh, probably they don't even know that I got EMBO fellowship. I would be surprised that they know, because I mean, maybe they had to write some, probably so, university probably knows. But I never got email like, we are organizing seminar, please come, you graduated from our university, so come by, that week I can talk to you, for example, and then share my experience. You can then approach me, I can tell you how I got EMBO fellowship, I can even probably share with you my application if you want, like we can discuss more. Those I got the fellowship in 2013, and since then I never got any email from university asking me about where I am, what I am doing, and inviting me for any of the talk with students. I think this is a huge problem, and I hope it will change.
Thank you.
Yeah, I unfortunately have to agree with all speakers that we lack mobility. And how did it work in my laboratory, so the group of my PhD supervisor, is that from the very beginning it was clear that you cannot stay there forever. So at the beginning of the PhD you should be aware in a properly constructed group that you cannot stay there, because the longer you stay, you don't benefit anymore. What you learned, you already learned after 4 years. It's impossible to progress in your career, I think. So, of course, it's not very pleasant to go somewhere and realize that you know very little. But this is the true. I think it's true for every one of us, that we just realized on a postdoc that we knew something, but that was just something, and we need to learn a lot, and this is the purpose of your postdoc. Now also the second thing that you should take into account is that Polish granting institutions, mainly NCN, is enforcing mobility in a way that you cannot be on a postdoc position twice in the same place. So you cannot be employed if you were employed before for longer than 1 year or something. So if you think in your career that you will do your PhD and then get a position and have stable life, comfortable life forever in the same place, this is not going to take place. So it's a much safer strategy to take a risk, go somewhere for a postdoc. I think this is the decision. This is not about EMBO, applying to EMBO. This is about the decision to go for a postdoc in general. And the longer you hesitate, the harder it is because of family reasons and other reasons. You age, you don't want to take risk. This is natural. When you are young, you should do it.
Okay, thank you very much. Do you have any questions? I'm asking the audience. Yes, go ahead. Can we have a mic?
I can speak up.
No, because it is transmitted and so on.
Okay.
Okay, I've got a specific question for Jan, because you mentioned after EMBO you got Marie Curie. So what was like your strategy for choosing whether, and also the general question, can you apply for more than one at once? Because yeah, there are plenty of opportunities. So how do you decide which like option you choose, and what's your strategy on this?
So the best strategy, if you have time, is to apply everywhere. And yes, don't laugh. You saw the success rate is low. It's a very competitive. Also, EMBO, Marie Curie, other FEBs, whatever, you can apply for mobility, but the chance you get, one of them is not high. Whatever you are, whoever, how many papers you have, this could be just a bad luck. So we wrote a couple of applications together with my future, with Guido Pintacuda, with my boss, to get any. Of course, then turned out I got one after another, and they were exclusive, so I had to drop one just to start the other one. So does it answer your question? Thanks.
That's exactly. So you can apply to many places. There's not a problem with that. But then you have to pick one. And then I see there are different considerations. Where is prestige, whether this is this family, social benefits, and this kind of stuff. But this is your decision. You worry later if you have, chance to select more.
Can I add something to that? Just a small remark. Just don't be afraid that you will be not chosen by the grant. So like, be prepared for not being success, and don't think bad about yourself that now my career has stopped, because as my now boss said that you will be surprised how many times I got rejected the grant, and I never thought that about myself. I just try and try again. So you have to just try.
Absolutely right. Yes.
I just want to add one thing about having one. If you can have more than one fellowship. I mean, we say that no, but it's not exactly true. I had 2 fellowships. I had EMBO. And I didn't have another funding from US, which I had to exactly precise that that the funds from the EMBO are for salary, and the funds from another institution are going for something else, like for the chemicals. Yeah, sure. So it is possible to have one, but if we talk about the fellowship for the salary and other stuff, then yes, you need to choose one, and the most prestigious one.
Sure, you may have different grants for research.
In this respect, also one word, in the EMBO application, at least at the time I applied, there was a specific field to specify what are the fellowships that you are aware of that could for example, top your salary. So EMBO does allow these situations. In my case, it was exclusive because both were Marie Curie actions. So there was one specific reason for that, but in general, it's not forbidden to have more than one.
Okay. Other issues?
Maybe can I have another question? Because this EMBO fellowship is maximum for 2 years. Yes, isn't it? So this is like some postdoc. It takes more than 2 years. So when continuing, is it like also this is also about this strategy where it's going to funding. So how do you deal with this like 2 year and what next? Yes.
Indeed, so this is why people consider different options, because there are other granting agencies that can give longer fellowships. But practice says also, if you are to get this fellowship, is also the host is evaluated, so you end up in a good laboratory. And in a good laboratory, there are also other funding options. So I couldn't imagine situations that you are sufficiently good to get this fellowship. You go to sufficiently good lab that they accept you, and suddenly there is no money available, even from the grants or whatever from the hosts. This would be very uncommon. It may happen like everything, but it would be very uncommon.
The question was more about, you mentioned that you got Marie Curie afterwards, like after some time, yes, and so it was like you didn't move after getting this Marie Curie. So when and also has to be for like a mobility. So you didn't have to move from the original lab. So did you apply with the same project and just got a second fellowship, or did you have to like go to a side project and then apply for the next fellowship?
The projects were partly overlapping. So that was another reason. And of course they were different, sufficiently different. But you know, with Mikey, there's also this mobility rule. So when I was there, you know, you cannot apply if you stayed in a country for more than 6 months. So the applications were closed in time. Otherwise, you could not do that. And just to comment, my children were also born in France, so I had to extend my postdoc even more. And then, as Professor mentioned, it's very unlikely for the lab not to have money for a good postdoc. So then it turned out that my boss has an ERC consolidator grant. So you see, don't despair. I mean, if you're good and you want to stay in science and you have a good CV, your postdoc is conducted properly, you will either stay there with your host money, or you will easily find another postdoc if you don't want to start your independent career yet.
Thank you. Do you have other questions? Yes.
So I think also Poland has a very great option for grants for young researchers as well, like this Preludium grant, and it keeps people in Poland also. Does it somehow interfere with applying for EMBO scholarship? Because I can imagine that people are young PhD students or PIs of a grant, and then they cannot apply for scholarship because they have to stay in Poland, do their research in Poland. Is it also an obstacle?
I don't think so. I've been on the Ancient Council from its beginning for 6 years, chairing the life science part. We discussed this many times. This issue is raised sometimes mostly by politicians, that they should spend less money for Polish research because otherwise people would be forced to apply for international sources. I really don't think so. I ran lab for over 30 years. I promoted over 40 PhDs and there were many postdocs, so I interacted with many young people. If you are motivated, if you want to achieve something, you would go for the best, okay? And obviously EMBO fellowship in the top laboratory is one of the best options you may have. Frankly saying, if you believe that you can substitute great postdoc in great place by staying locally at your university and having small grant, so maybe that's okay, and you are just not qualified for the great PI in the future, you know? So I don't see this, really. Looking at the real people, I don't see that somewhat, this was also the question, why people don't apply for ERC. Because they do not apply because they get sonata bis. Come on. The people in science are ambitious, yes? If they have a chance to have ERC and sonata bis, why not? They would apply. So no, I don't think that is any major problem, really. This is general problem, lack of mobility, is a mentality. What I also get from discussing with young people and reading on the internet, yes, part of the problem is hierarchical, feudal structure, especially at the universities. And very often people think it's better to be around to secure whatever, tenure, and so on. That's a problem. That is, it's a problem, it's a mentality not of the young people who have other, say, reasons to be mobile like family, but also mentality of people who run the big research institution or educational institutions. There's this atmosphere that it's better to be all around because you lose your chances. It's not only a Polish problem. Look at Italy, yes? It will be the same, yes? You better stick with a professor for a long time. This you give a chance that eventually you inherit this. We have too much inheritance in the Polish system, you know? The professor retires and then someone from the lab continues. In our institute at Gdański, it is absolutely forbidden. Whenever a professor retires, the lab is dissolved. 70, and that's all, okay? And there is open competition for the lab space, and the research area is not specified, it's very general.
If I could have a word regarding this grants for young scientists, I think in general it's excellent that we have them. And during my interview, I don't know if I could disclose the identity of my interviewer, Bettina. Oh, better not. Yeah, so it was Professor Lucia Banci, the head of the NMR center in Florence, and one of the best European centers. And the person was known to kill people. Really, everyone in this lab was the reputation is terrible. She is, yeah, but.
Now,
I know we are streaming.
You mentioned the name, and we know Lucia. That's becoming a problem.
So I was really afraid of her, but it turned out that she is a very nice person, and the interview was very smooth. And what she said that she really appreciated in my application was that I already had grants. There were small grants, I mean, pennies. In terms of scientific money, there were pennies. But she said, oh, my students don't generally have grants. So I think it's something that you should have in your CV. But what I think is wrong about NCN in these grants, that many people use them to extend their PhD. So they apply very late because they already have papers. I think this should be restricted to the people that are, for example, on the second or third year of the PhD, so that with the grant they don't extend, or maybe by half a year, just a bridging time to the postdoc. And exactly what Professor said, if you think that you can sustain using small grants, is simply, I mean, it's not attractive because you won't be ever well paid, you will never establish your group based on these grants, and someday you will just not get any more.
Okay, thank you very much. We are getting close to this session. Thank you very much, the participants, for listening and questions in the audience. I hope that something will remain in your minds out of this. Thank you.
So now it's time for lunch.